Like the first time I did it, I couldn't really believe I did it. They've tried to portray me like I was some kind of a creature, right? I was just like everybody else out there.
10 plus murders and at least 50 known rape cases. These crimes were committed by a single criminal, all in less than a decade. During the mid-1980s, Florida was torn to shreds by a lone serial killer whose name later turned out to be Joe Bobby Long. With a new victim found almost every week, the police force as well as investigators failed to track down the killer time and time again. This killer in particular had a growing hatred for women. Thus, he only targeted them until he met a young 17-year-old girl who would completely turn the tide on him. Ironically, the 17-year-old girl, Lisa McVey, already had a death wish. Lisa had for years been repeatedly sexually abused by her grandmother's boyfriend. As a result of her mother's addiction to drugs and alcohol, at only 14, her mother made her move in with her grandmother and her grandmother's lover against her will. Filled with rage, Lisa had planned to end it all by taking her life that fateful night. But then she fell into the hands of Joe Bobby Long, the rampaging Florida serial killer. This is the twisted case of Lisa McVey. At about 2 a.m. on the night of November 3rd, 1984, an exhausted 17-year-old Lisa McVey, who had just closed from a double shift at a donut shop, hopped on her bike and headed home.
I always took the same route on the way home. It was always dark, but it just seemed darker that night than usual.
Lisa wasn't just physically exhausted, she was tired of life and had already penned down her goodbye note. After years of being sexually abused by her grandmother's boyfriend, she decided that she was going to take her own life that night.
So I'm pedaling my bicycle on the sidewalk, but a car went by and blew the horn. And I'm thinking, that was kind of odd. Why would a car go by and blow a horn? I'm on the sidewalk.
But as she rode her bike and headed home to commit the act, someone grabbed her from behind.
And I looked back to the church again, and next thing I know, I was just yanked off my bicycle. It felt like 3 or 4 guys just jerked me off my bike to no end.
The man was none other than Joe Bobby Long, Florida's most dreaded serial killer, who had somehow remained invincible to the police. Joe Bobby Long was born on October 14, 1953 in Canova, West Virginia, and had quite a troubled childhood filled with instability and trauma. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was primarily raised by his mother, who reportedly had a volatile temperament and was known to be very abusive towards him. To make things even worse, Long was born with an extra X chromosome, also known as 47XXY, a specific variant of Klinefelter syndrome. This condition results in excessive estrogen production, which often leads to its patients developing some female traits, such as breast development. Long was teased as a child for his large breasts and underwent breast reduction surgery during his adolescence, which caused him to feel insecure about his own body from a very young age. He also suffered multiple head injuries as a child resulting from diverse accidents, leading to a struggle with dyslexia, which made school difficult for him and resulted in academic and social challenges. Dyslexia is a learning disorder characterized by difficulty reading, spelling, and recognizing letters and words. It can also affect a person's ability to comprehend written language. In Joe's case, dyslexia likely made it challenging for him to keep up with reading assignments, spelling tests, and understanding written instructions in school. This led to frustration and low academic performance, and it also impacted his self-esteem and confidence in his abilities. As a teen, Bobby Long displayed disturbing behavior, including cruelty to animals and an unhealthy interest in voyeurism and pornography. Long had a dysfunctional relationship with his mother. He slept on the same bed with her until he was a teenager, and it was reported that young Bobby Long resented his mom's multiple short-term boyfriends, the men she brought with her when returning home late at night from her job. Often, Long had to witness intercourse between his mom and her boyfriend since he slept in the same room she did. He also had several run-ins with the law during his teenage years, including arrests for burglary and sexual offenses. At the age of 13, Long met his future wife, Cynthia. They got married in 1974 and soon had 2 children, but the stress of parenthood added a level of volatility to the marriage. Unfortunately, around this time, Long was involved in a serious accident. He was hit by a vehicle while riding his motorcycle and was subsequently hospitalized for several weeks. Cynthia later claimed that Long's temperament changed following the accident. While he was always short-tempered, he became physically violent with her and impatient with their children. Long had also developed a strangely overt, compulsive, and often dangerous sex drive. Crime analysts would later attribute his violent character to a sexual obsession, labeling him as a sexual sadist. When Cynthia filed for divorce in 1980, Long moved in with a female friend, Sharon Richards, who would later accuse him of rape and battery. In the fall of 1983, Long was charged with sending an inappropriate, sex-infused letter and photographs to a 12-year-old Florida girl, earning him a short jail sentence and probation. During this time, Long also made the criminal leap to become a rapist. His method was to scout out for sale signs on houses and hunt through classified ads for furniture and other items, leading to an opportunity to enter an unsuspecting woman's home and force himself on her. According to the police, Long committed more than 50 rapes during this period. By the spring of 1984, Long had made another criminal jump. Long moved to the Tampa Bay area in 1983. In 1984, while on probation for assault, he committed his first murder. Long raped and strangled 20-year-old artist Ann Wick in March. Initially just looking to fulfill his sexual needs, Long picked up a young prostitute named artist Anna Wick in March 1984. After assaulting and raping Wick, he decided that he wasn't fulfilled, so he strangled her and killed her. Her body was discovered in a rural area on November 22, 1984. She had reportedly hitchhiked from Gas City, Indiana to Tampa and was engaged to be married. His criminal behavior escalated in the 1980s when he began a series of violent attacks on women in the Tampa Bay area of Florida. Between 1984 and 1985, Long abducted, raped, and murdered at least 10 women, often leaving their bodies in remote locations. His modus operandi typically involved picking up women, usually sex workers or those in vulnerable situations, before subjecting them to horrific acts of violence. In May 1984, while driving on Nebraska Avenue in Tampa, Long spotted a young woman walking named Lana Long. He pulled up to Lana and offered her a ride, which she accepted, but he soon pulled his car off the road and took out a knife. When Lana began screaming and attempting to fight Long, he tied her up and drove to a more remote road, where he raped and strangled her. According to the police, Lana Long's body was found face down a few days later, her hands bound behind her back and her legs spread far apart. The officers measured 5 feet from one heel to the other. Over the next 8 months, Long abducted, raped, and murdered at least 10 women in 3 counties in the Tampa Bay area around Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas. Investigations involved personnel from the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, or HCSO, the FBI, the Tampa Police Department, or TPD, the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, or PCSO, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, or FDLE. Yet they all turned out empty as the murderer proved to be evasive. Long's next victim was Michelle Sims, a 22-year-old prostitute. After luring her to his car, he beat and raped her over and over again, before slashing her throat repeatedly. Detectives, however, connected Sims' murder to Lana Long's when the same material, a red nylon fiber, was found on both women. Police then discovered Long's 4th victim, Elizabeth Loudenbach, some 17 days after she was killed. Loudenbach's body was badly decomposed when detectives found her. She was lying on her back, fully clothed. According to police, Loudenbach was different from Long's other victims as she was not a drug user, prostitute, or stripper. Then came the encounter that would change both their lives. In the early hours of November 3, 1984, the sadistic killer Joe Bobby Long spotted 17-year-old Lisa McVey on her bicycle in northern Tampa. He got out of his car, violently grabbed her from her bicycle, and dragged her to his car. After dragging McVey to his car, he put a gun to her head and ordered her to take off all her clothes. It was at this point that Lisa, who had already planned to take her life, had a change of heart. Overcome with fear, she suddenly realized that she no longer wanted to lose her life. Despite the fear she felt, this wasn't the first time Lisa had been held at gunpoint, so it wasn't new to her. Afterward, Bobby Long forcefully raped and assaulted her in his car before taking her to his apartment, where for the next 26 hours he raped her countless times and even showered with her. However, unlike his other victims, Long developed some kind of soft spot for young McVey. One minute he would be calm and caring towards her. The next minute he acted like a raging bull. After he had raped her repeatedly throughout the night, she realized she had to let the police know she was there at all costs, so she requested to use the toilet. As expected, her request was denied, but after she threatened to wet herself right there on the bed, she was allowed to visit the restroom. Once she went in there, she began to leave her fingerprints on the toilet seat, the mirrors, the ground, and the walls as well, hoping that might let the police know that at some point in time she was there. After leaving the restroom, McVey noticed how emotionally unstable Long was acting, so she began asking him personal questions, hoping she could find insecurities she could exploit to brainwash him. When McVey asked Long why he was doing all of this, he responded by saying his wife recently divorced him, so he has been doing all this to get back at women in general. Meanwhile, to humanize herself and win his sympathy, she made up stories about herself. She lied that she was the only caregiver for her father, who was terribly ill. Lisa McVey then told him if it was a companion he needed, she wouldn't mind being his girlfriend, but he responded by saying he couldn't keep her. That statement immediately brought fear to the heart of Lisa because she wasn't sure what his next action would be. Would he kill her? Or was he planning on letting her go? Nothing was certain. A few minutes later, he tied up McVey's hands and legs, put her in a car, and drove off. While blindfolded in the front seat of Long's car, Lisa tried her best to remember every traffic sign she saw and any bright light along the road, hoping those clues would help her later on. But soon the car came to a stop and she was ordered to step out of the vehicle. Not knowing what would happen next, Lisa McVey started to cry and pray. Around 4:30 a.m., Long dropped her off at an ATM and gas station. He then told her to wait 5 minutes before taking off the blindfold. Before he said to her, "Tell your father, he's the reason why I didn't kill you." She was so afraid that she didn't notice when the vehicle drove off. So after standing there for more than 5 minutes, with the little strength and courage she had left, she used her tied hands to take the blindfolds off. Once she did, she found herself on a deserted road all alone. And right then, she knew she had been spared. And as the feeling of relief hit her, she began to cry. When Lisa got home, her grandmother didn't believe her story. Her grandmother's boyfriend, too, didn't believe her story. Instead, he started beating her up, accusing her of cheating on him. She reported the whole story to the police, beginning with the color of the car, the word Magnum on the dashboard, and the red carpet at Long's house. She revealed that her abductor had used a bank machine just before her release. Despite this, her grandmother informed Tampa police that she had lied about being kidnapped. Nobody believed her the very first time she reported the event to the police, since she appeared so collected and could recount everything that had happened in detail. She filed the case again, and the outcome was the same. She still had the resolve to bring the culprit to justice. She made her complaint a third time, and fortunately for McVey, the police demanded an immediate investigation of the reported case. Lisa McVey was determined to ensure Long was arrested, so she told Sergeant Larry Pinkerton what she remembered from the attack. Just days after her ordeal, McVey heard a news broadcast about a murder victim in her neighborhood. McVey was so convinced that her kidnapper was the murderer that she called Pinkerton and told him that she had more to tell him. McVey told police about her incident again. Pinkerton, the detective in charge of the case, asked her if she wanted to be hypnotized to help her recall any buried memories. When her grandmother's boyfriend refused to permit her to do so, McVey reported his abuse to the cops, which resulted in his detention. Pinkerton then removed Lisa from her grandmother's home and put her in protective housing for young adults. Lisa McVey intended to ensure that Bobby Joe Long faced the same fate as one of her abusers, who was now handcuffed. Over the next few days, she took Sergeant Pinkerton through her ordeal, starting in the parking lot where she was abducted, and through the turns that she recalled Bobby making on the drive to his apartment. She then identified the tree where she was left, and the police set up a 2-mile radius search. Pinkerton's deputies searched the area and spotted a car that was quite similar to the one Lisa described Bobby driving. He also managed to take a photograph of Bobby, which allowed Lisa to positively identify her abuser. Forensics later searched his apartment and found all of the forensic evidence that Lisa said she left behind. Because McVey had momentarily felt her attacker's face and had glimpses of him through the little gap behind her blindfold, she correctly recognized Long in the picture. Eventually, Lisa McVey's story led detectives directly to Long. She was able to trace her abductor's actions, allowing police to locate his car. To begin their investigation, the police obtained the names of all 1978 Dodge Magnum owners in Hillsborough County and requested documents from all bank machines in North Tampa. After comparing the lists, they discovered that only one 1978 Dodge Magnum owner, Bobby Joe Long, had used a bank ATM at 3 a.m. on November 4th. Authorities discovered Long's car and residence located close to the bank ATM he had used. They tracked Long for 24 hours before arresting him for McVey's kidnapping and rape. On November 16, 1984, Long was finally apprehended at a movie theater near his Tampa home. This was exactly 12 days after Lisa McVey's kidnapping. The odd red fibers that had helped investigators identify the murder victims were discovered to match the inside carpet of his car. During his questioning, Long first admitted to the crimes against McVey. He initially denied involvement in the other deaths, but after hearing the police's evidence, especially the red carpet fibers from his car, he confessed to the crimes. By the conclusion of his questioning session, detectives had linked Long to 10 deaths, as well as McVey's rape and kidnapping. Unfortunately, the serial killer was able to take 2 more victims before his capture. Long agreed to a plea deal in which he admitted to 8 of the 10 killings. Long admitted to killing Wick and Elliot, but the remains were not discovered until after he was arrested. Long later received 28 life sentences for murder and rape, including those committed as the classified ad rapist and kidnapping. Once in custody, Long was also connected to another crime, the murder of Vicki Elliott. In April 1985, Long was convicted of first-degree murder in the Virginia Johnson case and was sentenced to death. Later that year, Long pleaded guilty and was convicted of the other 8 murders in Hillsborough County, among several other charges. He was handed more than 24 life imprisonment sentences and, in the summer of 1986, was sentenced to death by electrocution for the murder of Michelle Sims. While Bobby Long directly confessed to committing 10 murders, he alluded to the possibility of others during police interviews. The bodies of the victims were typically found in a state of decomposition long after the murders, having been dumped near a rural roadside or dragged into the woods. Long targeted vulnerable women, including abducting women walking alone and those working as prostitutes, and persuading women to enter his 1978 Dodge Magnum, where he raped and tortured them. Of Long's 10 known victims, 5 of the women were identified as known prostitutes and 2 as exotic dancers. The remaining 3 victims were a factory worker, a student, and 1 with an unknown occupation. McVey's life quickly improved after surviving the traumatic abduction. The girl who once contemplated suicide had been transformed by the encounter, perhaps the one positive from her traumatic experience. After leaving the runaway facility, she moved in with a caring aunt and uncle and worked at several jobs. In 2004, she enrolled in the police academy. She then joined the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, becoming a deputy with the same department that had captured her abductor. She specialized in sex crimes. Rather than allowing her past to define her, she channeled her experiences into a powerful drive to combat sex crimes and protect vulnerable children, turning her pain into purpose. Beyond her duties within the department, McVey also serves as a middle school resource officer, where she goes above and beyond her role by utilizing her own story as a teaching tool. Through sharing her experiences, she empowers students with the knowledge and skills needed to navigate potentially dangerous situations, instilling in them a sense of resilience and self-confidence. On May 23, 2019, the state of Florida executed Bobby Joe Long via lethal injection. Long had been one of the longest-serving criminals on death row at the time, having waited 34 years to be executed. Bobby Joe Long died on Thursday at 6:55 p.m. after receiving a fatal injection at Florida State Prison. He had no final words as he simply closed his eyes as the surgery began. The trajectory of Joe Bobby Long's life from a troubled child to a notorious serial killer revealed a chilling narrative, resulting from adverse circumstances, a dysfunctional upbringing, and violent behavior. Born into a world filled with challenges, Long's formative years were characterized by an environment steeped in instability, trauma, and obscenities. Raised in a broken and damaged home devoid of positive influences, Long's formative environment provided fertile ground for the seeds of violence to take root and thrive. As a young kid, he watched his mom have sex with different men almost every night. One can only imagine what that does to you. As Bobby Long navigated the confusing waters of adolescence and early adulthood, his inner turmoil manifested in troubling behaviors that foreshadowed the darkness lurking within. His struggles with dyslexia and his early feminine features, which caused other kids to make fun of him, didn't help matters either. A boy who was already broken having to deal with all these alone turned him into the monster he became, one with little feelings. No one saw the signs of the emerging predator early, and if they did, they overlooked them. Not even his struggling mother. Lisa McVey's journey from victim to victor is a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and the unwavering commitment to turn adversity into opportunities for positive change. Her story serves as an inspiration to all who face challenges, reminding us that with courage and perseverance, anything is possible. That concludes this video, guys. We pray the young ladies who lost their lives to Joe Bobby Long find peace wherever they are. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, like it and subscribe to the channel for more. We will see you in our next video.